Hi friends, can't lose weight? Here are 10 flavorful foods that can help people lose some weight. Number 1 is the blueberry. Berries are the only fruit that I will blend because they have been shown not to spike blood sugars. Now I give my family a berry smoothie as a dessert that is made out of 3 simple ingredients: dinosaur kale, soy milk, and a cup of frozen blueberries. Now you may think, yuck, kale. Well, when you blend it, it actually goes into tiny little bits, and when you put something more flavorful in it, like blueberries, that hides the taste of kale, and it really becomes a non-issue. Now, my family, they always want something sweet at the end of their meal, and they're gonna eat less healthy foods, so I make sure that if I finish their meal with something sweet in their mouth, and yet is highly anti-inflammatory, then they have something healthy. Now, some of you have asked why blending fruit ruins the nutrients in fruit. Well, it doesn't really ruin the nutrients in fruit. What it does, it destroys the structure of fiber. Now, if you think about it, plants have fiber. And why do they have fiber? It's to help them stand up straight. It's their skeleton. Foods that don't have fiber just end up looking like a blob, like fat. The fiber is the plant's exoskeleton, like an insect, and the endoskeleton, like our bones. So when you eat plants, your whole body has to digest through all that fibrous material from the exo to the endoskeleton of the plant to get to its nutrients. And this isn't really efficient for the body to absorb nutrients. So fiber is kind of like a time-release capsule where nutrients are slowly released into your body to allow your body time to acclimate to these new molecules. These molecules will change the density of your blood and attract different cells. Have you ever fed fish in a pond where you throw in the feed and all the fish come up and crowd in that area? My friend has a pond at her office, and she had trained her fish to come whenever she showed up. But then she realized raccoon shadows look a lot like human shadows, and so she had to untrain them. And imagine your blood cells rushing through your arteries whenever you eat food. If you get a rush of cells with food after every meal, you would have a sig alert every time you eat and go into a food coma. And some people feel like that. If your food makes you feel bad after eating it, maybe with stomach pains or nausea, or you feel tired, well, that food isn't good for you. You may want to change your food quality. And on an extreme level, that could be the start of an allergy. And people with extreme allergies can have massive swelling in their tissue called anaphylaxis. This is a life-threatening inflammatory condition in which they need access to an epinephrine pen or they need medical treatment ASAP. Most of us don't have these extreme allergic reactions, and instead we have subtle inflammation. It may make us feel a little tired, a little less focused, fatigued, irritable, grumpy, or it slows down your metabolism to make you gain weight. Food shouldn't do that. Instead, our food should give us vitality and energy and protect us from toxins and replenish our nutrition reserves. Digestion is a stressful event for the body. And this is why in times of crisis, you're not hungry. If you get in a car accident, your first thought isn't, where's my soda? If you get an infection, you may not eat for days. And if you're chased by a rabid dog, you're not trying to save your Doritos. Your body has to choose where to put that blood flow. It has to send it to your brain, but every time you eat, you may be diverting some of that blood to your gut. And it's not uncommon that we have to give medications to bring people's blood pressure up when they have sepsis. And we do this by removing blood pressure from less vital body parts such as the hands, feet, kidneys, and the gut. And unfortunately, there is no way around this. So what does this have to do with blending your food? Well, when a person feels sick, there is so much inflammation just in the gut. And unfortunately, if you don't eat, there's really no way to get in critical nutrients that you need on a daily basis. And at this stage, they're unable to really digest through that fiber. And that's why they may feel more nauseous and more bloated. And oftentimes, they're even unable to defecate. But instead of changing the food quality, many people just try to eat familiar foods just in smaller portions. And inflammatory foods are inflammatory. Bacon, hamburgers, hot dogs, and pizzas, these comfort foods, they perpetuate the feelings of being tired, gaining weight. And unfortunately, adding plants at this point may be a bit rough because the body is unable to efficiently digest through that exo and endoskeleton of plants. So this is where blending powerful anti-inflammatory foods can be helpful in recovery. But when you choose to blend the wrong foods, you can increase the calorie density. And if you're trying to lose weight, getting more calories in quickly will not help with the weight loss. But controlling calories by forcing yourself to chew your food and forcing your gut to digest your food will help to burn more calories. Hence, I don't recommend blending other foods but berries because blending will increase the rate of absorbing those caloric nutrients faster. Now, the second food is my favorite protein source, soy. This is unique because it's the only plant that has all the essential amino acids in the right proportions, and it also comes with it fiber, calcium, iron, and B vitamins. And in addition, eating soy has been shown to reduce cholesterol, reduce blood pressure, reduce blood sugar, and reduce weight. And on top of that, tofu is super versatile to cook with and will soak flavors and add texture to both savory and sweet dishes. You can't do that with beef.
First, there's a layer of ladyfingers, then a layer of jam, then beef sauteed with peas and onions, a little bit more custard.
Despite what I just listed, I like soy for other reasons, which I'll tell you later. But I think the most important quality of soy is that people don't realize that they unconsciously seek certain foods that can make or break a person's weight because of its texture. Now, this past weekend was Mother's Day, and our church had pastries for moms. Pastries are essentially flour, salt, sugar, and butter. And these are the same ingredients that make bread, donuts, cookies, muffins, and cakes. But yet pastries are special with an extra crunch and that cream. And when you add flavoring, especially fruit flavoring, you have yourself an addictive treat. And when you dissect it, pastries are basically metabolic time bombs designed to satisfy your craving. And I'm sure someone can make tofu do that, but it would be a waste of a very healthy food. But the experience of different textures in food is important in your diet journey. And that's why liquid diets fail. There's just one texture. It's quite boring to eat. On the other hand, eating a diet with soy can help bring life and textures to your food because this one bean can transform itself into so many different textures. If you want something chewy, like jerky, soy can do that. If you want something creamy, like pudding, soy can do that. If you want something that's kind of firm but yet soft, something like a meatball, soy can do that too. And sometimes I want something lighter and fluffier and spongy. And guess what? There is a soy product that has that texture as well. Rarely do I crave for noodles. And you know, tofu can be made into a noodle too. Now, I have the advantage of growing up eating lots of good Taiwanese foods made out of soy because that's what my mom made. And honestly, I didn't even like it much growing up, but I learned to enjoy it as an adult. Taiwanese food has a lot of Japanese influence since Japan ruled Taiwan for 50 years. My own maternal grandmother didn't actually learn Mandarin, so I couldn't speak with her, but she could speak Japanese even though she's native Taiwanese. Now, if you think about why you like the foods you like, there's probably a huge texture component. If we ground up potato chips, you think you would eat that powdered? And if I took a slice of pizza and put it through a blender, would you think that's edible? This is what happens to food in hospitals when people have dysphagia or swallowing difficulties. The original food is put through a blender so that they have a tray full of baby food. Now, do you think people will eat that stuff and not complain? Some people do, and those are usually people who can no longer talk. It's just as nutritious, but it has one texture, mush. And when my mom had to eat that way, she complained it tastes like dog food. And I'm not sure that she's ever really tasted dog food, but to her, it sure did look like it. But honestly, dogs, I think they eat better than their owners. I know people who will cook only fresh, organic, and minimally processed whole food for their dogs. But every week, they go out and buy heavily processed junk to feed themselves and their families. Now, we all gravitate towards foods that are salty with texture. And that's why crunchy foods and deep fried foods sell. We are in fact normalizing fair food. Have you ever been to a county fair? Have you seen what they deep fry? The last time I went, my friend bought chocolate coated deep fried bacon. And I also saw deep fried Twinkies. But funnel cakes, they always seem to be a hit. So many people buy funnel cakes that my son wanted to try one too. And I tried to talk him out of it, but he insisted he wanted to just try it. So we lined up to buy a deep fried dough. And all the kids took one bite and wouldn't eat anymore. It's really tasteless. I think that experience cost me $20, but I'm thrilled to know that they don't really like that texture. And they also bought a deep fried chicken wing. And it's hilarious. The first kid took a bite, didn't like that. So he handed it to the second kid, and the second kid sniffed it, didn't like it, and then handed it to the third kid. And the third kid, well, he basically just dropped it on the floor of my minivan. And would your deep fried chicken taste as good without that crust? To me, I would say no. I enjoy tofu because it gives me a variety of textures, especially the texture of fat. Now, I made this chocolate tofu pudding with just tofu, dates, strawberries, lime, and cocoa powder. But unlike unhealthy desserts, my pudding tastes like a dessert, but it has the nutrients necessary to complete a meal. In fact, now all of my desserts are nutritionally functional for me to eat. And this is how I control my weight and enjoy my food and improve my health. When I was younger, I would actually eat a full meal and then add a dessert. And then I realized that desserts were more caloric than my meals, and I would be gaining weight quite rapidly if I ate dessert every night. And at that point, I started skipping meals when there was a dessert that I wanted to eat. I basically saved my calories for the dessert. But the problem was I became nutritionally deficient because those desserts are not loaded with micronutrients. So I pretty much felt my pants growing tighter within a day or two after eating like that. And then the next few days, I would eat low-calorie diets, basically gorging on salads, vegetables, and fruits. And this is how my weight would yo-yo for several years until one day I got sick with inflammatory symptoms. And I realized I've been taxing my health, sacrificing it to preserve my weight. And when you don't have health, it really doesn't matter what you look like because you'll be stuck in bed. And that's when I decided to prioritize my health first. And when I did that, I effortlessly was able to maintain a constant healthy weight. By the way, organic firm tofu is the cheapest at Costco, but you have to buy 4 blocks at a time. Now, if you blend it, you have a creamy base for sauces and puddings. If you crumble it, that's a great ground meat texture when you dry it up. However, if you want something a little bit chewier, then freeze that box of tofu and defrost it overnight before you cook it. Now remember to squeeze out all the water and you'll get a chewier, firmer texture that is good cubed, crumbled, or seared like meat. And you can add to that sauces or add them to soups and stews. Now if you cook tofu alone, just remember you're gonna need a little bit of oil because it sticks to the pan. 1 cup of tofu has almost 20 grams of protein and 860 grams of calcium. And if you think about it, there's more protein in a piece of tofu than a McDonald's beef patty, which is 20% fat. So your 100% beef patty is basically 20% saturated fat. Now tofu tastes best with veggies, so remember to take out your pre-washed and pre-cut vegetables like carrots, celeries, and onions. Stir fry those separately, and when you're all done, combine your tofu and veggies together for a delicious tofu stir fry. And make sure to season that with plenty of crushed garlic. Now there's a lot of controversy about soy foods, just like there's a lot of controversy about every food and medicines like hormone replacement. Remember how I said I like soy for another reason? Well, I eat soy for its phytoestrogens, which are not like the estrogen women get in hormone replacement. The natural plant has survived the test of time in diets eaten for thousands of years, but hormone replacement therapy was only introduced in 1942. And did you know that estrogen is from the urine of pregnant horses, pregnant mare urine, hence the name Premarin? And in case you didn't realize, all mammals have estrogen, including men. Postmenopausal women has less estrogen than premenopausal women. And if you are worried about estrogen, then make sure you are not constipated and you're avoiding poultry, beef, chicken, or products made from mammals like dairy, since these animals and these products will all contain very potent estrogen that mimics your own body's estrogen. Mammalian estrogen hormones are 1,000 times more estrogenic than endocrine disrupting chemicals that are commonly found in water. And that's why Premarin from horses is an effective treatment for postmenopausal symptoms, which are uncomfortable, but they don't kill people, unlike the side effects of Premarin. And literally, you can increase your risk of endometrial cancers, cardiovascular disorders, breast cancers, and probably dementia. Now, I'm not making this up. It is literally on the black box label. But even if you don't eat animals, you are probably exposed to the estrogen pollution in farm animals due to the tons of poop that they make, which contaminate drinking waters and food supplies. Plant phytonutrients, these phytoestrogens, are very different. And certain plants like soybeans have unique phytoestrogens that no other plant has. And yes, many plant chemicals, they interact with your body and modulate your hormones. The popular diabetes drug metformin is a biguanide and was originally purified from the French lilac, which was prescribed in medieval times as a prescription to relieve intense urination, which is a classic sign of uncontrolled blood sugars or diabetes. Metformin also affects your hormones like GLP-1 to reduce your appetite and your blood sugars. You know, in reality, there's no food that won't have an effect on your hormones, be it plant or an animal or fake stuff made in processed food factories. The soybean is concentrated in unique phytoestrogens called isoflavones, specifically genistein and diazin, which both have a much weaker estrogenic effect than your own body's estrogen or any animal's estrogen. The unique thing about phytoestrogen is that they can be protective against the effects of estrogen and have anti-estrogenic effects. So different soy products have different amounts of isoflavones. And your body, it makes different estrogens too. Premenopausal women have higher levels of estradiol, and when they eat plant phytoestrogens, those plant chemicals will act more like anti-estrogens, preventing them from the negative effects of too much estradiol, which can promote cancers to grow. However, postmenopausal women, they stop making estradiol, hence they get postmenopausal symptoms. Asians, however, suffer much less postmenopausal symptoms. And I don't think it's our genes. It's the Asian diet, which benefits from the weak estrogen effects of soy isoflavones. And if you are a man, you may have had rumors it can cause gynecomastia, which is enlargement of breast tissue. Now, everything good has a limit, even phytoestrogens. However, there are no controlled trials to support that theoretical concern. So in reality, this is not a practical concern. However, what I do see is that gynecomastia is happening in people who don't eat soy. Here's a list of the more common causes of gynecomastia that have nothing to do with soy. And think about it. How many Asians do you know walking around with gynecomastia? There are billions of Asians and millions eat soy daily. The reason why phytoestrogens can have opposing effects is because there are two types of estrogen receptors, alpha and beta receptors, that affect tissues differently. And they really have opposite effects. Beta receptors inhibit breast growth, and phytoestrogens like genistein, they target beta receptors to stop breast cancer growth. It is a very weak alpha receptor trigger which promotes growth. And you have to make it to a soy to even come close to the potency of Premarin. Now, the liver, it has alpha receptors, which when triggered can release clotting factors. And that's why Premarin causes blood clots. The uterus also has alpha receptors, which promotes the growth of the uterus, just like it does in breast tissue. Animal estrogens are just like your body's own natural estradiol and estrone to promote breast and uterine tissues to grow. And that's why Premarin increases the risk of breast cancer and uterine cancer. Now, if you have a estrogen receptor positive cancer, you may have been offered tamoxifen, which blocks the receptor to compete with estrogen to prevent the cancer from growing. And my personal goal is to prevent cancer before I get a cancer diagnosis. My best friend, who is also a physician, had breast cancer twice. And every day I remind her to eat her tofu. Women who eat soy can reduce their risk of endometrial cancer by 30%. And as an added bonus, it can dramatically reduce menopausal symptoms and help you to mitigate your weight. As a medical doctor, I think less is more, so I try to find foods that can help preserve my health span. And this is why I drink soy every day. Soy has been shown to preserve bone density, especially in the lumbar spine. Now, my dad suffered a lumbar spine fracture, and that was the beginning of the end of his quality of life. Now, bone density, that's really big business, and the data is really meaningless unless you can reduce fractures. And that's why osteoporosis drugs, they're not as popular because they don't work as intended, and they can even destroy your bone. Soy, on the other hand, and has been shown to reduce fractures, unlike dairy, which is associated with higher fracture rates. I'm so glad I never liked drinking milk as a kid, and now I'm lactose intolerant, so that's nature's way to warn me to avoid that toxin. I encourage my family to eat soy because eating soy as children, teenagers, as well as adults are all associated with decreased risk of breast cancer. And by the way, men can get breast cancer too. Now, if you're against soy because it is GMO or it's been sprayed with glyphosate, then buy organic. Soy and minimally processed soy products like soy milk and tofu, they've been eaten by Asians for thousands of years without any weight or obesity problems. As the countries who eat soy, they live over 10 years longer than the average person in America. In fact, eating plant proteins can help to lower blood pressure, reduce LDL cholesterol, and improve insulin sensitivity, even when you're eating it in a highly processed form like the Impossible Burger. Number 3 is another bean that I consider very flavorful, and that is hummus. Hummus is so simple to make, but they're sold almost everywhere now, so you can buy it pre-made. But just be aware that pre-made hummus has more salt. Salt is something that is worth training yourself out of because you will eat more food when it is salted. Try eating popcorn that has no salt and no oil. You won't eat much of it. I had a long conversation at church this week with my friend who binged on 2 giant movie buckets worth of popcorn with salt. The popcorn by itself really isn't the problem unless you add the flavoring that makes people binge on more popcorn. So the lesson is, if you want to eat more food, add salt and flavoring to it. And really, of all the processed ingredients to ask people to quit that can solve weight issues, cardiovascular disease, and cancers, the biggest bang for our buck is sodium. Now, if you are barely sweating, you really don't need even close to a gram of sodium for an entire day, and this can be met by eating all natural whole foods. Everybody overeats foods loaded with table salt, which is sodium chloride. And the thing is, it causes a massive amount of inflammation starting with your blood vessels within 30 minutes of eating it. Now, if you took out salt, deli meats wouldn't taste good. Neither would hot dogs, bacon, or your baked chicken, your steak, nor would your noodles, chips, crackers, pizzas, sauces, or French fries taste good. Every restaurant automatically gives you more salt on the table because they know if you add it, you'll eat more food. Try eating McDonald's or In-N-Out French fries without salt. You're probably not going to enjoy it much. I've tried it. Try eating a lean steak without salt or sauce. You're not going to eat much of it. Salt hides the rancid taste of oxidized metals in meats, and hence frozen, pre-seasoned meats will have more salt. I personally avoid these meats. And this is also why junk food is super salty. I, too, also binge on junk food. When I saw junk food on sale, like at the 99-cent store, I would buy a shopping cart full of 99-cent junk food. I thought it was a real bargain. In fact, my kids used to have to tell me I'm buying too much stuff, Mom. And my excuse was that was on sale, so I'm actually saving money because it's cheaper than regular price. And that is a logical logic and the hallmark of a person with a food addiction. And when you think you're saving money by buying junk food, but in reality, you're going to be spending money later on your healthcare, you're going to be losing money faster paying for your healthcare bills and drugs. Now, until I had my own personal journey with inflammation, I thought I was really eating relatively healthy. And to compare it to what I was eating in college, it was healthier. I was eating better, but it wasn't good enough because I was now older and my old body didn't heal like my young body when I was a kid. And eventually my body would show symptoms of inflammation. I struggled with hay fever, eczema, hives, and shingles. Who gets shingles in their 20s? I did. Some of you may wonder what in the world I did to my body. Well, in case you didn't know, the stress of becoming a doctor is like being an athlete without a coach. Nobody told me that I needed to eat better, so I just ate whatever everybody else was eating, and that was basically flavorful, addictive, not so healthy foods. Free food was attractive since we were all stuck in the hospital. And there were no rules to protect my sleep. In fact, often I was on call every 3rd night or every 4th night. The longest shift was 36 hours without sleep. A 24-hour sleepless shift was very common for everyone. I knew I had to exercise, but I had no energy nor time to do so when you're sleep deprived and not eating well. And this was a lifestyle of a young medical student and medical resident. So yes, I abused my body through sleep deprivation, nutrition deprivation, just to become a medical doctor. And at the time, I didn't really think of it like that. Obviously, this lifestyle isn't sustainable. And between between the pressure of the physical and mental stress and sleep deprivation for about 9 years, my body just simply quit. And I never really thought of myself as an athlete until I realized stress is stress. Whether it's mental stress or physical stress, the body interprets it the same way. And in fact, we are all athletes, whether we know it or not. And the end goal is to see who wins the race of health span and lifespan. I'm sure you've heard crippling stories of horrible athletic injuries, but I realize you really don't need to do superhuman athletic feats to injure your body. We need to give it equipment and allow it to rest. And this is why I put so much effort in nutrition education, because I want to optimize health. If you don't have your health, everything else will take a back seat. My experience has been over a quarter of a century as a medical doctor caring for people who are suffering. And the one component that I see that plagues so many people is sodium chloride. It's really a double-edged micronutrient. So I quit salt and I quit seeking salty foods because I realized the more salt I eat, the more food I want to eat. And now my palate is very sensitive to salt, so I don't need a lot of it to be able to enjoy my food. And many people, they don't add salt to their food, but they don't realize there's so much salt in sauces and dressings. And have you seen how much salt is in doughs like pizzas and bread? That garlic bread is tasty because of salt. So my cardinal rule for myself is if I'm going to eat something salted, then it can't be paired with something sweet or fatty. So the only thing I add salt to is fibrous vegetables. Otherwise, I'll just be eating a lot of unhealthy, highly caloric foods. Some people may notice that they begin to swell in their hands and in their feet. And if they check their blood pressure, they will notice that their blood pressure will be higher the days after they eat saltier foods. And the reason is because wherever salt goes, water follows. Salt also actually constricts blood vessels within 30 minutes of eating it. And the net effect is elevation in blood pressure. Now, sodium is an essential mineral. So really, how can this be so harmful? And like everything else, it's the amount. Running water is good because it flushes your toilets and allows you to wash your hands. But if your toilet overflows and there's a leak in your sink, then you're going to have a flood in your house, which can damage the infrastructure of your house. And this is the same way with any single nutrient, especially salt that draws in water. Your body is actually very good at conserving salt and will change how much you absorb or how much you excrete depending on how much salt it needs. However, it is also easy to overwhelm the system with a flood of sodium. Look at your breakfast, your lunch, and your dinners along with your snacks. And if you're not sweating all day long like an athlete, you're not going to need more than 1,000 milligrams of salt a day. In fact, the average American diet is getting 4 times this amount in sodium. And like everything else, the poison is in the dose. So when your body has an excess of any one item, it really affects another item. And that item is actually potassium. Potassium is also a salt, but it has the opposite issue. People don't eat enough potassium. And at one point, our ancestors were thought to eat 10,000 milligrams of potassium a day. I'm sure you've heard bananas are high in potassium. Well, that's not exactly true. A medium-sized banana has 422 milligrams of potassium. Imagine how many bananas you have to eat to reach 10,000 milligrams of potassium a day. 99% of Americans are eating a potassium deficient diet, and it's really hard to taste the difference in your food between sodium and potassium. And that's why a few salt substitutes are made out of potassium. But unlike sodium, potassium is anti-inflammatory and lowers blood pressures. Of course, it's best to eat it in whole food form. Megadosing potassium is also bad because there's a narrow range of normal. And when you have too much or too little, you can actually cause irregular heartbeats. Now, foods that are rich in potassium are primarily leafy greens and beans. And unfortunately, your blood serum is not an accurate way to measure a person's potassium stores. And it's really hard to measure potassium because it's not stored in the blood. It's actually stored in your body cells. This is why, number 4, I target eating naturally salty foods like kale to help me meet my potassium needs. So every time I gain weight, I would eat more bulky leafy greens, which fills me up and gives me energy. And in addition, leafy greens are a little bit bitter, so they would blunt my cravings for sugar. Another way to eat leafy greens is in the form of spices, like number 5, basil. And when you add spice, you're adding more fragrance and flavor, and this complements other foods to help satisfy your taste buds. Now, it's really simple to add to your other foods. When I make hummus, I usually will blend a vegetable in it like basil or cilantro with then peppers to give it a kick. So I take 1 can of garbanzo beans and I rinse it, and to this I add a clove of garlic, which sometimes I will microwave with a little bit of oil, take that edge off the heat. Garlic is a powerful flavoring enhancer. Did you know there's literally a restaurant in Beverly Hills that serve everything garlic? I've never been there, but I doubt they're just giving you garlic cloves. I'm sure when you go there, every bite has garlic, oil, salt, and maybe even sugar. Now, my friend made me a garlic dumpling once with just chopped garlic fried in oil with some salt wrapped in dough. It was really tasty. That's the power of flavoring oil. Now, oil isn't a real food, it's a nutrient. Real food comes with several nutrients, and real food is harder to overeat. Hummus is tasty because there's tahini or ground up roasted sesame paste and lots of onion powder and garlic powder. And remember, all nut and seed butters, they're highly caloric, and if you are watching your weight or trying to lose weight, then you may want to reduce highly caloric foods like nut and seed butters. Now, the second reason why people add oils and fats is because they simply make food more palatable. And when your food doesn't taste good, you just simply don't enjoy it as much and you don't want to eat it. So if you really want to lose weight, keep your salt low, keep your oil and fat low, and keep your sugar, processed sugar in your diet low. Now, if you get off this diet, the weight will return. So it's best not to be on a diet, but to build habits and find ways to replace unhealthy tastes and textures. To counteract salt, use spices like chili pepper and cilantro. This all goes in a blender along with a squeeze of fresh lemon juice. Adding that fresh citrus scent gives it an aroma to reduce my cravings for salt and fat. And hence, number 6, add more citrus fruits to your diet, both sour and sweet, and use the rind. Human noses are designed to taste aroma. That is why when viruses attack your olfactory nerve, the one responsible for smell, food simply tastes bad. And when you're done with this aromatic spread, you will have a great dip or dressing, and it's good to eat right from the spoon or in a filling like ravioli. Now, beans like chickpeas are also a great source of fiber and protein. And together, all these properties help to regulate blood sugar levels, suppress appetite, and overall reduce the risk of weight gain. Beans even work the day after you eat them. This is called the second meal effect. Now, I know this is easier said than done because beans can make people feel bloated. And that's because the fiber draws in a lot of water, and you have to have the right equipment, the right microbes to metabolize these foods. So like an athlete, you may have to train your gut to work up to tolerate a cup of beans. And this journey is really for your lifetime. So there is no need to rush it. Just start with 1 bean a day with your meals. Then each day, add another bean with another meal. And you keep this going on every day. And it's okay to freeze cooked and canned beans and then defrost that. Now, it may take you several weeks to work up to eating a cup of beans per meal, and that's okay. The goal is to eat at least 3 cups of beans a day. Number 7 is to eat more nuts, which can be used in both savory and sweet dishes. Nuts add texture to foods because they are crunchy, but inside they are fatty, so they add depth to bland foods like salads. They're also a rich source of protein and omega-3 fats, especially walnuts. Now, if all I ate are leafy greens, I honestly wouldn't be satisfied with that meal, and in fact, I probably wouldn't eat it again. But when I pair those low-calorie leafy greens with just a bit of texture, especially the texture of cream, texture of being smooth, then I tend to eat more of the leafy greens. Think about salad dressings, but the more nutrients that I get from my calories, the less food I'll eat, and therefore I'll start losing weight. So everything that I eat is really a way to dress up more leafy greens. And this is a way to pair nutrients. Leafy greens, they have a lot of micronutrients, but they don't have a lot of protein, carbohydrates, or fats. And hence I make it a point to season my leafy greens with items that are filled with proteins, complex carbohydrates, and good fats. And nuts, they fit all 3 of these categories. And plus, if you eat your nuts whole, so if you don't turn it into butter, you're probably only absorbing like 60% of the calories due to its hard fiber structure. premature. Number 8 is to upgrade what you eat that are sweet. Now, there's nothing wrong with enjoying a sweet treat, but it needs to be all natural in its original whole food matrix, let's say some fruit. But when we try to imitate fruit through chemicals such as flavorings and we add sugars or sugar substitutes, they may resemble what is in nature, but there's nothing natural about these products. And it's probably okay if you eat them occasionally, but when you make it an everyday item, well, that can be a huge problem and a great way to pack on weight. Some people make it a daily habit. And when you have these habits to eat something sweet and flavorful, then that's how you can pack on a lot of calories really fast. At one point, we allowed our kids to eat dessert every day. It was ice cream. And a meal really wasn't complete until they ate some ice cream. But ice cream is far from being natural. And if you ever looked behind an ice cream container, you're going to find some processed sugars and emulsifiers. If you've ever frozen milk or cream, you know it doesn't have that texture that professional marketing ice cream has. And the thing is, these emulsifiers, they actually destroy your gut microbiome. And when your gut microbiome is unhealthy, you will begin to have problems because you create a leaky gut situation. And you will hear people tell you, eat sweet foods or carbohydrates with fat and protein to delay your blood sugar spikes. And that works, sure, if you eat a high-fat ice cream, that will delay your blood sugar spikes, but your sugars will still spike. It's just later. And you're not checking it, and that's why you don't know about it. So why would you want to delay your sugar spikes? Wouldn't you rather stop having sugar spikes instead? And by the way, having high sugar spikes is really not as important as how long your sugar stays elevated. And the solution to this problem is not to eat fake sugar or to randomly choose just eating any fatty protein. The solution lies in getting yourself insulin sensitive. Asking someone to trick their sugar from spiking is like asking an athlete to stay at the finish line so they can finish first, even though they didn't technically move. I mean, it's kind of silly, illogical logic. And that's what a lot of bad advice is, teaching people to trick their metabolism, their body, to tolerate bad food. But the trick is actually on your brain because you still see the sugar spike if you check your sugars later, and there's no way around it. You are what you eat because we all follow the laws of chemistry and biology from every organism on this earth. There's no exception to humans. And if you choose to eat fake food, you will tax your metabolic health. The path to insulin sensitivity is all the foods that I just listed. And what these foods do is improve the function of your mitochondria. All these foods that I listed are rich in micronutrients such as vitamins, minerals, and thousands of phytonutrients that are special, unique to each plant. They interact with not only your body, but they interact with your gut microbiome to ultimately all reduce inflammation. Number 9 is hydrate your body well to allow this metabolism. So try to fill yourself up with some green tea in the morning. There are all different kinds of green tea. My favorite is jasmine green tea. But in 2020, I trained myself to drink matcha tea, which is like eating green leaves. Now, I used to think that brilliant green matcha powder was artificial, but it's not. Although you still need to be careful because some brands, they will put artificial ingredients in green teas. Green tea contains EGCG, epigalactocatechin gallate, a polyphenol that regulates mitochondrial metabolism to help you control your weight and your blood sugars. This is why I drink green tea and take a green tea extract in the morning. And if you want to know what I take, I have a link in the show notes below. Number 10 is to add more antioxidant-rich foods like AMLA, which are Indian gooseberries. Now, I won't lie, this stuff is hard to eat as it's kind of tart, but it's so worth it as it's shown to reduce blood sugar, insulin peaks, triglycerides, and can even increase HDL cholesterol. 3/4 of a teaspoon of powdered AMLA a day is the optimal amount. Now, if you go to your local Indian store, you'll probably find it in all different forms that are frozen and dried. Now, if you find the berries whole, 2 berries a day is really the goal. Indian gooseberries, just like many berries, they're just some of the best foods that we can eat. And if you want to learn more about these foods, watch the next video.